Recording. Hello everyone, it's Kasia from Terra, and this is the next episode of my hopefully wonderful Inspired Terra series, where I invite inspiring people or people who inspire me, and I would love to share those people and their ideas with you. And in this episode we are hosting Patrick J. Fogarty. I would say our own beautiful Patrick. Most of you probably would know Patrick, but for you who don't, Patrick used to have a great YouTube channel in 78 Cards, where he shared a lot of his wonderful and deep knowledge about tarot. And right now he is also a creator and producer. What would I say? Producer as well? Creator of this, the living wheel astrology cards deck. And we share a lot of love for Tarot de Marseille, Patrick.
Yes,
and we share a lot of love for astrology now, as it seems as well. So I'm really excited to have you over in my channel on this series, and welcome.
Thank you. I'm really excited to be here. I've been looking forward to this since we started talking about it. Because you're right, we do share these things, and I feel like I've known you forever, because we've just in my journey with tarot, I feel like you were right there right from the beginning. So, and I've been watching your channel for a long time. So it's cool to be able to sit down and talk to each other.
I know, finally, as we said, you know, like when you watch somebody's videos, you kind of feel like you know them, and it's a lovely kind of moment to catch up, actually finally catch up and chat to each other, and you kind of have the sense of feeling like, yeah, we're friends, we've known each other, we know who we are. Yeah, so
for sure. We do have a lot in common.
yeah, and I have to say that I think I got to know about you through Kelly from The Truth in Story, when I started watching, and I met Kelly through YouTube, and then I met you through Kelly, and it was also great to watch, you know, your tarot journey evolution, and how you went from kind of many decks to Tarot de Marseille to very little decks to maybe like no channel on tarot, you know, in some way. And it was really interesting, because I had a similar journey in some way, not the same, but similar, when I was into many decks. And then when I met Tarot de Marseille, I just went, I don't need another deck. I just, for 2 years, I think it was for me in 2016, maybe 2015, I was just going, I just want to have my doddle. This is the only deck I need, you know, and it was totally like, I was just in love.
Yeah, it's an amazing, it's one of the best things I think about anybody doing YouTube, and having done it for a period of time, where you get to actually see, you know, we as creators of YouTube content, we've always, you know, you kind of plan in your mind what your next video is going to be, and then, you know, you kind of gauge yourself and follow your own sort of intuitive path and in terms of what your interest is. But when you've been on YouTube long enough, then you can look back and you see this whole sort of transformation take place over 3 or 4 years of filming videos. And it's really neat, because sometimes, even when you're really tuned in and really paying attention, you know, and living intentionally, you still miss, you know, your own growth and your own sort of trajectory. And it's not until you look back and you can see, oh yeah, like I was really just, I mean, I used the Wild Unknown for the first 2.5 years of my tarot journey happily, and I didn't even have another deck at all. And then, like you said, I just started to really get in. My collection never really expanded to a huge level, but I really found that I always say I'm sort of an artist cheerleader. My wife and I have an art gallery, and so we love supporting people who are sort of following their creative passions. And I don't know, there's something about it that it's always been just such an honor that I've been able to step into spaces where I get to sort of be the hype person for somebody who I really believe in what they're doing, you know. And so tarot is such fertile ground for that, because there's so many amazing creators, and there's so many you know, amazing people. And so my deck collection sort of grew in some ways out of that. You know, I was like, oh, I really love the Moonchild Tarot and the Starchild Tarot and Danielle Knoll, the creator there. And so it was really neat because it also fed filming content for my channel, you know, which I always loved to do. You know, I loved to talk about the decks and why I liked them and engage with people, because it's just, you pull in like-minded people, you know, and it's really neat. But then it swung back around, and I don't know, I started to realize like my own, the channel started to become bigger than sort of what my own practice was. And I found that I was more, you know, more focused on like, okay, how many reviews have I, you know, managed to get out this week? I'm being really overwhelmed because I definitely want to talk about these. And then I'm responding to the comments to all the videos I've already filmed. And it just, it sort of hit me. I think I had a lot go on. I know I had a lot of personal sort of life events happen in the end of 2017, from November of 2017 through all of 2018. I had a death in the family. My grandmother passed away, and she's central to my whole experience as a human. And so that really rocked my very small family. And my brothers had a lot going on. And then, of course, my work is seasonal. So when I'm working, like 8 months of the year, I basically have no days off at all. And so it just became really clear all of a sudden that if I was going to keep living intentionally and keep walking this path, there needed to be space for this, because there was just not enough time in the day. And so I dialed my collection back, you know, Tarot de Marseille, the old, I don't even say always Marseille. I always talk more about just the historical tarot, because it really is all the way back. I know that people look at Pip style decks and they say Marseille, but it really goes all the way back to, you know, my favorite deck is probably still the Visconti Sforza. So, which is you know, the true Marseille people would say that's not Tarot de Marseille.
Yeah, no, it's true, of course. Like in this case, this is a historical deck or a Pip style deck. It's not typically Marseille deck. I probably should have said historical decks, because Marseille is just part of it. But I love Visconti as well. So, you know, it's just, I totally get what you're saying. It's a good clarification.
Yeah, well, I was one that I kept getting all the time, and I finally just, you know, I was like, okay, what do you want? What with the feedback I'd get is, that's not a Marseille deck, that's not a Marseille deck. And it's like, what do you want me to call it then? Because to the general sort of tarot audience, it's either Rider-Waite-Smith or Thoth, or everything else is Tarot de Marseille.
Yeah.
So, but then, you know, in stepping away, I had to make those hard choices to sort of figure out where I was going to sort of put my energy, my focus. And it really ended up being an amazing part of my journey to sort of step back, because I've had to look, you know, I've now had some perspective. I've been off of YouTube now for almost a year. I stepped away last spring, and I was really worried I was not going to be able to engage with the community. I was really worried I was going to miss a lot of what I do. And there are times where I do get a deck, and the first thing I want to still go do is film a video and show it. But I find that passes sooner than not. And I still get to share it and talk about it through Instagram. And then I'm watching videos like yours and getting to comment in the comments again. And it's just, it was more, honestly, there was no big thing. It wasn't a big deal. I think it surprised people, but there was no big, like, shocking thing that caused me to step away. It was just, for me, time management. It was just time management and honoring what was really going on in my physical life out here.
Yeah, I hear you. But to be honest, I was devastated. And we had a little exchange, right? When I wrote you, like, what did you do with your videos?
I know you were one of the first people I heard from.
Like, what? And I just actually watched your interview with Simon, and I had, because I wasn't sure, but you actually deleted the videos. I'm like, no.
And in retrospect, that was, I will concede, I do think everything happens for a reason. I think that was a mistake, because I think I was just at the moment, at the time, it was sort of the right thing for me to do, because I needed all the external energy to sort of stop. I needed to stop being notified of comments. I needed to stop because I had like these major life events happening at the same time. And I was really struggling with feeling like, you know, I love the community and I've loved the relationships that I built. So I really felt like I can't just sort of, for me, with no disrespect to anybody who films videos, you know, once every 6 months and maybe responds to comments, I took it really seriously. Like I used to respond to every single comment, and I was very, I don't know, it wasn't just a fun thing for me, you know? And so I felt like I couldn't half do it in retrospect.
But now I'm thinking, you know, switch off comments, switch off likes, just
yes,
the videos, because they were informative and there was so much on this historical decks. And I you know, I felt a bit like, what? How dare you, Patrick, delete your own videos?
I know. Well, and I think to myself, I did a lot of like research for those walkthroughs, especially the historical decks, and like I did the whole timeline of the Visconti Sforza family, and I know. I'm officially saying here with you, it was a mistake.
Okay, thank you for acknowledging this, because that was heartbreaking for me.
Oh, I know.
No, but
who knows? I don't know if I ever will come back to video, but if I do, I'll have to add some of those videos back to to make right away, because I do love them and I love the history of tarot so much. And
yeah, and you also had those, you know, very special editions of the decks, and just to have it on the screen and hear you talk about it, it's like it was just informative and beautiful and unique. It's not like you can go and see, you know, even, you know, your new deck, the Living Wheel, you can see it on this channel, on this channel, on this channel. You know, you won't see like the first edition or whatever edition of Friday Waite Smith from whatever age. You know, you're like, wow.
The first edition of Rider Waite Smith, like this one.
Oh no, you don't say fuck you to the guests. Sorry. I remember my jaw dropped when you showed this deck, and I'm like, wow, I'd love to just touch it. So I'm always thinking, you know, when I love somebody's videos, I was just like, oh, I wish they lived closer so I could just pop in, like have a little chit chat about tarot decks, exchange ideas and go away, you know. But at least we have Zoom and stuff like this. So this is a wonderful some way
you live, you learn.
You
live, you learn, you know.
Yeah. So listen, can I just ask you quickly about your ancestry? Are you kind of Irish?
Yeah, my family, the ancestry would definitely fall actually on both my mom and my dad's side, Canadian, but on my dad's, so I have a lot of French in my family, French Canadian, but the ancestry I really connect to and sort of had a spiritual experience around is definitely my Irish ancestry. So my grandfather, my mom's father, his dad and his grandfather both, and his father came right over from Ireland. So when I went to visit Ireland a couple years ago, it was profound. So that is the ancestry I tend to connect to more, but I have a whole lot of French Canadian.
yeah, that's interesting. I always think, because I'm like Polish, I never done the test, but I would be probably like 100% Polish. I'm like, it's so boring. I want to be like a mix of something, you know.
I'd like to do that. I haven't done it either. It's not that hard to do, but it's kind of expensive, and I feel like when I get it, I'm going to want to submerge into all of that, and my whole brain's going to go out of control, and I need the time.
And also, to be honest, I've watched a documentary or like a little YouTube video on it, that it's 50-50 really. It's not really giving you that 100% certainty about the ancestry, and it changes. And while the app is uploading, you know, kind of the percentages change. And I've heard it's a little bit kind of money-making machine really, which I think it's a great idea if we found a way to really kind of make it a little bit more certain, because 50-50, that's a bit low.
Yeah, I agree. Totally.
Yeah.
I would want what I've done for research, and Kelly, my friend Kelly, and you know Kelly from the Truth and Story, she did it, and she summed it up in a nice way, in that because I know hers was surprising in some ways to her, and then she did all that research too. And there's sort of your DNA, what your current DNA is one aspect, but then what your family's ancestry story is still, it can be a completely other thing. Just because you may not have gotten the German strand in your physical DNA, that doesn't mean that your grandparents weren't from Germany. It didn't come down, you know. So I
Yeah.
think it gives you that one. It gives you maybe the physicality of the DNA, but you still have to. I think the big adventure is in learning the story, your family story of the DNA. So.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
sounds beautiful. So let's talk a little bit about we kind of covered a little bit my question about your tarot journey, how that changed. But actually, maybe quickly before we go into your astrology cards, like the interest in tarot, were you always on this kind of spiritual twist? And when tarot did come into, your kind of perception?
Yeah, I absolutely have. I've always been a seeker, always, from as far back as I can remember. My mom really is that person who I have such great memories as a child of. She raised me and my brother in a way that now I see as very kind of new age, but and quite ahead of her time, considering she came from a pretty strong Catholic background. But she,
Maybe she
she
was, I'm sorry, maybe she was like a proper Catholic, when you
maybe.
actually worship God's creation and
There you
everything.
go. Yes, absolutely. Because she did. I mean, she really, that's a really good way of saying that, because she is still somebody who I know finds a lot of comfort in some of the iconography and the religious figures. I know Jesus is huge for my mom, and walking that path of Jesus. But my mom also even as little kids, she told us that animals are completely to be honored, and they have their own feelings. And when it would rain outside, and we grew up very, very humbly and with no money, and so something fun to do would be, when it was raining outside, we'd go pick worms out of the puddles so that they wouldn't drown, and we were saving them. And the trees, we'd the trees had feelings, and when the wind blew through the leaves and the leaves would rustle, that wasn't just the leaves moving because of when they were talking to you, and we'd stop. And I mean, and I was 4, 5, 6, 7 years old, so when you grow up like that, and I feel really fortunate to have, you kind of take it for granted, like it's your home base. It wasn't until I got till the 8th grade where I started to really understand that the world was very different, than how I viewed it. That people are really reckless with the environment, and that animals are sort of mistreated, and there were divides between people. My mom always described love as love is love is love is love. So you grow up and you fall in love with whoever you fall in love with. There was none of this like male female, it had to be a certain way. And this was in the early 80s, so this was really ahead of sort of where we are today, which we still have a long way to go, but it was really ahead of that. So in some ways, I'm really thankful for the way that I grew up. However, I will say it made for kind of a nightmare experience from about 8th grade through high school, because my whole paradigm shift of how I viewed the world was generally looked at as absolutely crazy, and I definitely suffered the consequences of that with my peer groups, around me.
Yeah. So tarot, did she use tarot or not really?
Yeah, so she had a deck that she didn't use it in the way that I now know how we use tarot. It was one of those things where I think she found it more meditative than anything else. But she did expose me. So sorry, that was a long way to go back to your question. But yeah, so for me, when I was a teenager, sort of struggling, all of a sudden, like, okay, how I thought I was raised one way, and it's very different another way. It definitely put me on that seeker's path for sure. And I started looking for answers everywhere. So I started bouncing from religion to religion. And then I fell into sort of at the time, it was like the occult section of the bookstore that I would spend hours in. But that's where I found tarot. bought a Rider-Waite-Smith. I was 18. I bought a Rider-Waite-Smith deck, and my grandmother gave me an astrology deck an astrology book, the big astrology book for my birthday, my 18th birthday. And I'd say from that point on, both astrology and tarot have been a part of my life, but I disconnected from tarot almost immediately. There was no internet back then, so I didn't understand anything that I was looking at, and I felt like I couldn't access tarot at that point. And so it flashed forward to like 6 or 7 years ago. That's when the Wild Unknown. I found the Wild Unknown through a weird series of synchronistic events, and just immediately connected to it. And it was like it was always meant to be. Like Tarot's my number one tool, I would say. So it was nice. And then astrology, my whole journey to astrology right now absolutely has come from and sort of evolved out of my journey with astrology, with tarot. So they're very interconnected.
Yeah, I totally get that, because, I also love, that's what I said, we share love for tarot, for astrology, and for crystals. I forgot about crystals.
Yes, those are my three.
Basically, we could be brother and sister.
I'm fine with that.
So I totally hear what you're saying with tarot and astrology, and I don't even see astrology being connected to tarot like Crowley saw it. It's not my point that this card is connected to Mercury in Virgo, and I don't really I can't be bothered with that.
No,
but I totally I actually loved how you described it at Simon's interview. So I don't want to be repetitive, but you said something that tarot holds space for, or like tarot is the system that holds space for all the other systems. Like you can fit everything into tarot: astrology, numerology, this, that, Kabbalah, this, whatever you want, really, herbalism, and anything really. So I found it quite a beautiful way to describe how I also see tarot and astrology connecting, because for me it's not even about picking, as I said, this certain aspect of astrology and connecting it to this particular card and that's it. It's like, it's okay, I can use it like this as well. It's not that I have any problem with that, but most of the times I don't use it like that.
Yes, exactly. It's amazing. Tarot, it is what I keep loving more and more every day about tarot and appreciating is that there's, almost anything in the world can be symbol based. Astrology is very symbol based. Religions have a lot of symbols in them. Walks of life have a lot of symbols in them. But tarot seems to be able to take all these symbols and somehow become a home to them. And you end up with some decks that are super simple, and there's maybe only, maybe you're only dealing with the elements of the planet, the 5 elements or whatever, and that's the basis of that tarot deck, and it's just the elements. But then you find other decks like the Marielle Tarot, where it's like every symbol in the world is layered into each and every card, and it's like an onion, there's so many layers over and over and over again. So I think that's really amazing that tarot can do that. And if tarot can do that for the systems of the world, if it can hold space for that, I think it's one of the reasons why it's so powerful to work with, because we never sort of hit the end with tarot. We're just always keep going,
Yeah. But I feel the same about astrology, to be honest, because I started studying astrology in 2005. After I had an astrology reading in 2004 at some point for my birthday at the end of the year, and I was just sold. Like, and I'm Sag, I'm mostly air and fire. Like, I don't have too much patience for something I am not passionate about, and I love to change my mind very quickly if I don't like it. Like, gone. And this astrology and tarot, they stuck, because these are systems that they don't end. They like life. They just always evolving with you. The more you evolve, the more suddenly they become deeper. And I study my chart since then, and it's still, new things all the time. And even the old aspects that I already knew, obviously, like I have whatever Chiron opposition moon, it manifests like this when I'm 20, and it manifests differently when I'm 30, and it manifests yet differently when I'm 40, because you have this evolution, and it's just never boring. It's amazing.
It's definitely why I wanted to design the astrology deck in the way that I wanted it to be as simply designed as possible, because I don't think that the cards have, the physical cards don't have to hold or represent all the symbols that can be layered in. And I think in some ways, when you free the cards from that, much like Terra de Marseille, when you free yourself of all this, the meanings and the interpretations and the icons and the imagery that's attached, you can actually, the card opens up that much more. Because it's not like, you know, for a good example is if, with astrology decks in particular, the houses, you know, the astrology houses, we boil everything down to a single keyword, but they're never a single keyword, ever, ever, ever a single keyword. They represent so much more. But in the decks that I was working with and finding, you know, I think there's this real sort of push-pull that happens, because you, as your relationship with, let's say, house one deepens, you start to really form your own meanings for the cards that resonate the highest with you. And it's not that you discard all the other meanings, but you know what house one means to you, and you start having and building that relationship. And what happens with cards that have all kinds of keywords or illustrations all over them is the card stops working, because the card has maybe a representations on it that don't jive with how you see it. And it's not, and so for me, I wanted a deck that was, you know, simply like house one is house one. And now when you look at the house one card, it can be what you see and feel house one to be. And that only comes from spending time with astrology and studying astrology and deepening your own relationship with house one. The same works for Mercury, and the same works for, you know, all of these things. We have to do the work of building the relationships.
And that was also my, you know, because I know that a lot of people would go like, oh, but how do you use it? I don't know astrology, but that's the point. To me, being an astrologer and seeing this deck, I think this is a great visual aid to learn astrology. And you don't actually call this deck oracle deck, because to me per se, it's not really an oracle deck. You know, you can work with the keywords if you want to, but mostly it is actually to visualize what you're studying, and that helps, because it's like with tarot, you see a picture of two of cups, and you can, you know, it's this visual aid which helps you to get things. And actually these are astrology cards, and I think it's really wonderful that for somebody who also, you know, we have different ways of learning. Some people are more visual, some people have to see and speak, and, you know, some people have to really read this, to see a picture and to have this visual kind of simple aid to actually notice, like my sun is in Aries, my moon is in Libra, you know, my Venus is in something, but you have to learn also the components. So this is not a deck for somebody who is like not interested in astrology. That's it, basically, I'd say.
100%. And I've tried to be really transparent right from the beginning and say, you know, I didn't design this deck to teach anybody astrology, because I am not an astrology teacher. I designed this deck to use as a visual aid in my studies. And from that seed point, I mean, like I've said before several times, I started with sticky notes because I was basically building flashcards in a way to try to just, because of the point you're making, I'm a visual learner. And what I was so struggling with astrology is the tools of astrology really center around astrological charts. And for whatever reason, I think it was just really between the chart itself, the round chart with all the angles, right, exactly. That itself just completely, still to this day, when I look at it, I'm definitely much more comfortable with it. But I was like, how do I access this information? How do I even begin to understand the system? And I found myself right in that same position that I was with Terra when I first started. You know, I remember when I got the Wild Unknown, I was like so overwhelmed with, I have to memorize 78 cards. And oh my God, out of the 78 cards, there's 2 suits. What the hell are suits? And, you know, okay, there's a major arcana and a minor arcana. Okay, what are we talking about? And then within the minor arcana, there are 4 suits in between the minor, and some of them are attached to water and some of them are attached to fire. I was so overwhelmed. But with tarot, because it's visual, you can lay them out. You know, you can set all the major arcana cards to the side and you go, okay, I don't know a thing about these cards, but that's what they are. Those are the majors. And then over here is the minor arcana, and they are divided into 4 suits. So here those are. And it like really supports you then, you know, before you know it, you realize you're not memorizing keywords, and you intuitively start to pick it up. And with astrology, it was like looking at that chart thinking, I don't even know what the system is in this thing. And so dividing them out by, okay, there's the planets or the planetary bodies, and then there's the star signs, also known as the zodiac, and then there's these houses, and then there's the moon phases themselves. These are all very distinct things that have their own energy. They all work in a different way, but they all work together. Being able to lay them out for me really made astrology far more accessible. And it was only in doing that then I sort of realized, like, I know a lot of people who are interested in astrology but are really turned off. They can't access it. They just can't do it. And I thought maybe I should try this, and I had no idea that it would be received so well. It's been really fascinating to watch.
Yeah, I'm like so cool. Like, congratulations, because if I can just mention like the execution of this deck, this is like a little gem. It's beautiful, Patrick. It's like meticulous. It's so amazing. Like, and you know, I've handled like hundreds of decks, and amazing decks as well, and this is definitely like top notch. Like, just the production, the artwork, I just love the simplicity of it. I even thought, you know, if you don't even like astrology but you like moon phases, even the cards of the moon phases are beautiful. But obviously, you know, you have to not be the baroque style lover that likes a lot of colors and a lot of, because this is a simple deck, and this is a beautiful elegant deck. And even I love the ideas with the, you know, with the constellations for the zodiac signs rather than just the symbols.
Yeah.
I think that's very alive. Just look at this lovely Gemini.
Those were cool. So hard to do because the lines are so thin.
Yeah.
And I was working with gold foil, so it was just kind of like, holy cow. But
wow.
You know, I wanted the inspiration for the simplicity was one, historical tarot, because like you, I just love the simplicity in those pip style decks, and it's amazing how freeing they can be. But 2, when I really started researching traditional astrology, which Chris Brennan has a YouTube channel called the Astrology Podcast, and he's really done a lot to bring Hellenistic astrology to the forefront, and that the traditional astrology. And he reminds me so much. I describe him as like the Benabel Wen of astrology, you know, because he's got that brain that just, I'm like, sometimes I'm listening to him and thinking, where do you put all of this information in your head, and then spit it out in a way that's understandable. But I was listening to one of his lectures, and I thought to myself, you know, how would I draw this deck? How would I paint this deck? And I was so inspired by the fact that, you know, back in the day, way back in the beginning, all they were doing was just simply looking up at the skies. There were not all these computer programs and apps and all these things. They were literally looking up. So they were looking at the constellations for the star signs back then. And so I thought, okay, I'm going to do the constellations as the star signs. And then I thought, well, I'm just going to do the planets. You know, they were, you know, Mars, or Mercury is a better example. Mercury has this connotation of like transmission, of being a planet of communication. And I was researching that, and one of the reasons that came to be was because when you look up at the sky and you simply look at Mercury, it moves through the sky like no other planet. It's zipping around fast. It has its own unique sort of trajectory. It doesn't follow the same traditional elliptical. It's kind of going over here and then it goes over here, and it does it really fast. And so I can see being being way back in history, looking up at Mercury going, well, that one's weird. You know, that one looks like it's literally just running information back and forth like a mailman, you know, it's, and so I thought, well, I'm just going to draw Mercury. I'm going to paint Mercury, you know, and it's how it ended up being just this sort of like, my goal is when you lay these cards down on your desk or your table, I hope that it's like lifting your head up and looking up, and we've all done that in our lives, and I think there's this beautiful star card energy that comes through every time we look up to the heavens and the skies, I think, and I hope that the deck is able to sort of bring a little bit of that energy to your sacred space, you know.
Yeah, and I'm glad you included my favorite Chiron, and I have to share with you a story, because with Tarot by Anya, with Anya, we chatted when you kind of announced that you have a surprise something, you know, before you before we knew that this is the deck, and Anya went like, what is Patrick up to, you know? I'm like, I don't know, what do you think, let's pull some cards, you know? And then she says like, but maybe, you know, if he said maybe like, you know, that he thought about you when he was doing this, maybe it's about astrology. I'm like thinking, no, I don't think he was so much into astrology. And then you came up with astrology cards. I'm like, oh shit, Anya, you're good.
Well, first, Kelly is. I always thought I would have Chiron in the deck, but if I had ever a doubt that Chiron wasn't going to be in the deck, Kelly would not allow that, because I was talking to Kelly quite a bit through that process, and Kelly was like, please, 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 I know there's a million asteroids, and you only want to have this deck be a certain number of cards, so you've got to, if you have to only pick one asteroid or one non-planetary thing, it has to be Chiron. And I was leaning that way anyway, but then I did get to the end of the deck, and I hadn't done the north or south node yet, and and I was planning on those two cards being like keyword cards, you know, and I said, I've got these two cards, I've got to design, you know, how do you put information on a card, you know, like keywords. It was really frustrating me, and she was like, you do a fold out booklet and you have to do the north and south node. And so she was right, you know, she was so right about that, because the north and south node are really, I really love them in this deck, and I love Chiron, and the traditional astrology doesn't necessarily always lean that way, but they're really important, and especially Chiron, I really feel like it would have been a miss to not have put it in the deck. So
yeah, you know, I've done like hundreds of readings, and that's my job, you know, and to be honest, I don't care what traditional astrology leads to or not, because it wasn't even invented discovered when traditional astrology was happening. I have a proof of my own life and my own eyes and my own feedback from clients, which you can also read on my Etsy shop if you're interested, you know, that Chiron bloody hell works, and nobody will tell me otherwise, because I have experienced it's working. And it's
so
powerful energy. And to know about your Chiron, it brings a lot of shadow work, and it brings a lot of empowerment. And it's one of those, it's not even an asteroid, apparently it can be even a comet. Nobody knows really what it is really, because it's kind of very unusual object. We all have it, and I always compare it to this, you know, whenever I do a Chiron reading or something, I always say I compare it to the story of the fairy tale of the green pea and the princess. It doesn't matter how many mattresses, how beautiful, how comfortable they are, how many of them you put on the green pea, you will feel your Chiron, and you have your Chiron in your face. You have to work with your Chiron, as with all the other planets. But this is like painful, you know, this is a wounding, this is something which annoys you don't like it. You know, Chiron's mom went like, I don't want you. And this is a part of ourselves when we go, I don't want you. So what don't you want in yourself, you know? So Chiron is important. So I'm really glad to see Chiron here.
Well, and that brings me to the second thing I was going to say is I did have you in my mind throughout the creation process. And it was interesting for me because you and I had not talked about this, and I had not shared publicly my interest in astrology at all, because I felt like my strength with tarot was in my public sort of sharing of tarot. I really wanted to help people to see that idea of the layering, and you can strip it back. And so I didn't want to then be, and I love astrology, and then go into that whole conversation, like you mentioned earlier, about people assigning the planets to tarot cards and blah, blah, blah. And I don't view astrology that way either. And so as I was creating the deck and I've watched your videos, you know, I thought, you're a really great example of somebody who, you know, you connect to so many people, and you do readings for people, and you work with tarot, and you work with astrology, and how amazing. You obviously have such a love for tarot and the cards, and you know, it's something you're so passionate about. And I thought, then you get to astrology and you're left with that graph, you're left with the chart, you know. So what a different experience for customers or clients to go from this sort of rich tabletop experience with all these amazing tarot cards, but then when it comes to astrology, you're left to sort of a talking head and a chart that, you know, makes no sense here or there to the person on the other end. Makes a lot of sense to you, but it doesn't make sense to them, and you're trying to explain it to them. And I thought, I hope that this deck, for somebody like you, a professional, even if it's just like that, you say, okay, this is your chart, and I'm showing you here Chiron is in your third house. You know that they're on the receiving end going, I don't even know what you're talking about. You're just showing me a bunch of lines. But if you hold up the Chiron card and then you share your P story, it's a whole different level of sinking in. And my hope is that, and my hope when I was creating those is I thought, I hope people like Kasha that this helps them engage with their clients in this way that builds a longer term relationship. Because so many people know their sun sign, you know, I'm a Taurus, and then some people might know their moon sign. And I know Chiron is super trendy, and people are like finally starting to wake up to Chiron and the importance of Chiron. But like you just said, every planet, every single one of us have every single planet at play. And so that's so amazing, because you can really sink into that with astrology, and you can go, okay, here's Venus. Where is Venus in my chart? You know, and oh, it's, you know, right now it's in my 12th house, and it's going to be there how long? And you start to, you know, go there. And I don't know, I feel like the professionals like you, I hope have this opportunity to sort of really engage people now around that in a way that is fulfilling to not only the sort of message that's being delivered, but just visually as a tool. You know, I hope it's a modern day tool.
That's interesting. I'm not too sure, you know. That's why I said, like in the beginning, that's because maybe I know astrology. I thought it would be maybe hard for me to use this deck. And I think this is the best tool, in my opinion, for somebody who wants to learn astrology. Because I think also I wanted to mention that when you say about, you know, astrology and astrology reading and the chart being like this graphic, and I think the more you know astrology, the skillful astrologer brings that to life. It's like with tarot reading, you don't just go via keywords. The skillful tarot reader makes a story and makes it, like Chris Brennan, accessible to somebody who is listening, and makes it interesting. And it took me 12 years of studying astrology to actually get to the point when I can feel like, okay, I'm not just going to say your sun is in Gemini and that means na 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 na. Your Mercury is in Gemini and that means na 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 na. You know, everybody just after 5 minutes you're like, what you saying?
Yes.
Like you connect things, you see things. You, like when I look at the chart now, I see tarot cards, or I see a picture. You know, I see music. I see I don't know. It's like everything is moving, and I see what connects to what. So, but that comes with, as what you mentioned in the beginning. If you're not interested in learning astrology, you don't get a deck like this, because like it will be probably lying on your shelf. But if you are interested in learning astrology, I think this is a brilliant tool for actually mapping it out, making it easier for yourself, putting those planets out. Because I think for professional astrologer, like to use it in client readings, I can use it, but if a person doesn't know what a Chiron is, and like this probably won't tell them anything anyway, even if I show it to them, you know. So I think what I like, for example, some planets might work better. Like if I go, you know, Saturn, you see these rings, You know, it
Yeah.
can be about boundaries, healthy boundaries, you know, like sometimes, yeah, you can go check those rings out, you know, rather than just imagine Saturn with the rings. So some things might work better than others, but I think this is brilliant for beginning, for intermediate, for altar work, because I like the style, I like how it looks. I will definitely put, you know, if I have like Uranus in my 12th house or whatever, I have Saturn in the 12th and now square by Uranus, like I want to put them out there, you know, just to respect that energy, seal that thing.
Yeah.
So I can connect better through this, but I find it hard for me. It would be hard for me to use it during the client readings. It's just
so interesting, because that, and I totally respect that, and I definitely think that it's one of those things for me that, and it could be just specific customer, and it, like you said, it also could be based on the length of time somebody's actually worked with astrology. I like when I first started learning about astrology and the internet sort of debuted, one of the first things I started watching on YouTube was astrology sort of videos. And it was always, I wish I printed a chart, but it was always somebody holding up the chart and talking about the chart. And I always felt on the receiving end of that as like, because the chart doesn't even say Saturn. It's the glyph of Saturn, you know? So it's like, I was like, they're basically talking Greek, you know, and even the folks that were able to sort of express it and are so amazing and who do what you do and tell the story of what's happening and they make that chart accessible. I always thought it was just funny that the chart stayed visible, because as a receiver, I'm like, I still don't know what you're holding up at me. I might as well be holding up this and going, you know, like just holding up a crystal and just, you know, it doesn't make sense. And so I totally respect what you're saying, because I think that it's two different things in many ways. It's the craft of being the interpreter and the storyteller, and in that regard, you could do an amazing tarot reading without probably ever showing the customer your tarot cards, because you just need to see the tarot cards so that you know what story you're telling, you know, how you're delivering the message. The client never has to see them. But when we talk about like that embracing the magical, we talk about those things that shortcut us into that. For me, when I say embrace the magical, I always talk about the things that make me feel, that put me in that sort of space where I'm physically and mentally aware of the sort of spiritual experience, or the not divination, but you know what I'm saying, like that space that when you walked into the pyramids in Egypt, you felt something, you know. And when I look at tarot cards, when I got the Visconti Sforza and I laid the cards down on the table, I feel like that Visconti Sforza, it shortcuts me into that embrace the magical space where I'm paying more attention to my intuition, and that I'm more engaged with the cards. If I like the deck a lot, I am somebody who is more engaged. And as a receiver of astrology, I've seen a lot of beautiful birth charts, but for me, birth charts are still always so disconnecting because they're so mathematical looking. And so
actually there is something, yeah, that's, if I can just interrupt you, because I think maybe if I, like, for example, set up some of the cards, because I have an issue with it as an astrologer, for example, just to use it the way you say it, just because, for example, if I have a client who has 5 planets in Scorpio, you know, I have to, like, I have one Scorpio card and like all these planets there, and sometimes you have to group it into houses. It just becomes also quite a chunk of like to put it out, to actually visually, and to be honest, I never speak about all the planets during a session. There's like no way. Exactly. So you know, I just pick certain, that's why I have Chiron reading, and like life purpose, I have a big that lasts than like hour and a half, this reading, you know, so I can have time to actually speak about a few different things. But so sometimes it's just the practicality, but I think you can definitely set up certain, like, for example, if I do a reading, and tarot reading and astrology reading, to set up what I'm going to, like, pick an aspect or pick a let's talk about, I don't know, this, and then depict it with the cards. I think that would make sense, because I think you like, I know where you're coming from, because you're an artist and you like beauty, and beauty heals, and beauty.
Yes.
That's why you want to show cards to your client, because they have their own response. Also, you know, I can do my interpretation, but they see things that I have no idea they're even getting. So I think the beauty in this also helps. It just helps. So maybe not the whole chart, but yeah, I would definitely go for an aspect, or for a certain, if I talk about a lesson of somebody, and this is a big, for example, I don't know, Uranus opposition Mars and the houses, and depict this, that could work.
Well, I mean, a good example is not too long ago, a couple days ago, I guess, or last week, we had so many things in Pisces. We had Mercury in retrograde in Pisces. We had Neptune in Pisces. We had the sun in Pisces. We had the moon in Pisces. You know, that day was like, and I was talking to Kelly, and I realized, like, I don't think I would have even paid attention before to that aspect. I would have seen it on the chart, but when I was, like you said, having to lay, okay, here's house one, and I was laying out all these cards, I was like, geez, holy shit, Pisces has got a lot going on. Just, you don't have to know a thing about the meaning of any of them to just know that house is crowded.
Yeah, totally.
And it was totally crowded, and so there's a tone that gets deduced there when you have that visual of, like, you know, okay, here's the comparison. You know, right now for me, house 5 has nothing in it. There are no planetary bodies in house 5, and house 1 had 5. You know, so I immediately knew, like, I'm shifting over to here because it's all here. So much is happening over here right now. So I'm really excited for you to be talking with you about it, because, you know, like I said, you're right on. You're exactly what you're saying about the deck is exactly what the intention behind the deck, and it's so satisfying to hear that the seed level of it is being received, which is, it is to support one's studies. You can use it as an oracle, like you said, if you want to just work with the keywords and shuffle. I don't use it that way, but I created a little blurb about it so that people can. And I, like my mom, that is how she uses the deck. She's just using it as an oracle. Doesn't mean anything to her. She just works with the keywords.
It's totally possible. And by the way, you picked good keywords.
Oh, that was
I was like, look,
that was the hardest part.
I know. I was looking at it. I'm like, well done, really good keywords. So it's really difficult. I think that would be very difficult for me, because it's so much you can say about each of this, and to pick one, which, you know, it's, as you said, it's always one. It's definitely not showing the whole picture, but these are good keywords.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, I really wanted to, for me, it's the same thing with tarot. You know, I like the 3 of Swords we hear all the time is grief, heartbreak, loss, da 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 da. Yeah. And I always, because I read with Pip decks, I always see the 3s as growth, and I see the Swords as of the mind. So growth of the mind, growth in the mind space. How does that take place? Well, yeah, a lot of times we do have that growth through heartbreak and loss, but it doesn't only have to come from that space. It can come. A major change in perspective, or a major change in looking at things, doesn't just have to come because of that betrayal that comes with heartbreak sometimes.
Yeah.
So, you know.
Yeah, so, I always see this, you know, 2 of Swords with like this thing, and then the sword coming like this, you know, otherwise you kind of have the stalemate, like nothing is moving at this jewel, but then you have the 3rd sword, just finally, it might not be easy, as you say, but at least you have some movement.
But it's going to break it up. Yeah. And I much prefer the decks that are visually that way. So when I got to painting this, and then got through that, but then started with the keywords, I realized, like, I don't want to do that. I don't want to lock any. I want these keywords to either be able to be, like, Mars was a good example, because Mars, you often hear sort of, well, Mars is a benefic planet. I mean, a malefic planet. It generally speaking, it tends to be viewed as the other end of Venus, right? It's the negative, it's the other side, you know, it's the active masculine, all these things. And I just wanted it to be able to be viewed in a way that wasn't completely negative or completely positive, but still stay true to Mars. So assertion came to mind.
Perfect.
Because assertion can be super appropriate and super positive in one's life, but you can also be assertive and have it be really negative. So I tried to make sure that was the case with the keyword.
But even, Venus, when I thought like unification, I'm like, that's smart.
Yeah.
Like, I wouldn't know what to pick for Venus, because that's also like, relationship, love, art,
beauty.
But it's always this like weighing, and like, go unification.
Well, and that's the Venus is amazing, because Venus, Venus is my ruling planet. I'm a Taurus, and literally Kelly and I talk all the time, and Kelly's a Libra, and Venus is her ruling planet too. And I kept thinking, like, yes, I'm a Taurus and I love things and I love beautiful things, so it definitely aligns. But then I think of Kelly, and Kelly's so just always weighing. She's always weighing, the sides of things. And I thought, it's not just about love and relationships and beautiful things. It's just the pulling together of things. It can be one good idea weighed against a bad idea, or this versus that, or a historical tarot collection that's beautiful versus a one simple deck that is just that you picked up that still touches you the same way. So I'm glad to hear you say that, because that was definitely the biggest challenge. Not the art. The art was not the biggest challenge. It was the keywords.
Yeah, and I can totally imagine. Like it's really good job. It's well done, and I think in this regards it can be easily used as oracle if somebody is happy with one keyword, and then they can really practice imagination. I so much more prefer these decks, just like you, the pip decks too. I mean, it's not even that I prefer the pip decks to other decks. I love all the decks, but pip decks are freeing and a good, but then the good intuitive reading, the good picture, that's also like, I love it. I could not just have pip decks, unfortunately. I'm just, in this case, I have South Node in Taurus, so I get that. And Libra moon also, so I love me some art.
Yeah. I know I'm a Taurus sun sign, but then I'm Pisces moon and Pisces rising.
Oh, wow.
And so it's been really interesting as I've gotten older, because people always have said, oh, you're a Taurus, and I am. I'm definitely, what people see of me is very Taurus-like, but they don't always see. And it's been, as I've gotten older, a lot of my own personal shadow work and just sort of working with people in my life is letting them know, hello, like, it's not just all bullhorns here. Like, there's a Pisces rising in here, and there's a Pisces moon in here, and like, yes, I'll whip up the horns, but you gotta like be careful too, because like,
but totally, I totally see Pisces. I totally see Pisces in you. It softens the Taurus. I mean, Taurus is kind of, it's a feminine sign. It's like a beautiful, it can get stubborn or anything, but it's Venusian sign. But I love Taurian people for the kind of grounded energy. And I think for you, the Pisces also gives you a bit of this, like artistic kind of this vibe and the sensitivity and probably amazing intuition. So, that's
it's really fascinating. I just, the astrology, being able to dive into it and have this sort of be this finally something I can talk about. And now that with the deck out, there's a space for it. It reminds me so much of just all the passion I have for tarot, because I could just talk about it all day, and now I feel like I have a way to talk about astrology. So it's an honor to be able to do it, and to connect with even more people, because I definitely am seeing that huge intersection between tarot and astrology. Because initially when the deck first came out, most of the people that were placing orders, I recognized a lot of those names, and that's tarot. And now it's definitely, it keeps growing outward to this huge astrology community where I don't know anybody, I don't know a single soul, and it's nice to be able to have a way to talk to people and get to know them that way too.
I actually going to send this, I'm going to do a review of this deck, but I'm going to send it to my friend Kelly Surtees. She's a traditional astrologer as well, but I studied with her, I know her, and she's in Canada, I think. She's Australian, but she lives in Canada. And I think she might appreciate it, at least for her to know that something like this exists, because she has a lot of students who probably, just start. And
You
that
know
might
what's
be.
so funny? I did not know that you know her.
Oh yeah.
Somehow I've missed that. And she's one of the people, like, I subscribe to her membership monthly so that I can get her videos, because I love her. I've never spoken to her, but she is, and she works a lot with Chris Brennan, but she is so phenomenal at what she does in terms of just making this information accessible, and her energy is so fantastic.
She's a triple
That
Pisces. Pisces sun,
Yeah,
Pisces moon, Pisces ascendant.
yeah, yeah. Well, that's probably why I resonate so much with her, because I literally, Tom Benjamin just did a video walkthrough of the astrology of my deck, and he asked for references, and I listed her in the comments below because she's just so fantastic. I had no idea that you were connected to her. So
I actually studied with her, like we studied with the same teacher. She was way ahead of me. When I met our teacher in 2005, she was already studying with her for a few years. But this teacher died maybe a year after I met her. So we were at the funeral of the teacher. We kind of got to know each other, and I studied with her like a level, because I did level 1 with my teacher, and I studied level 2 with Kelly, one-on-one in Australia, in
so
Sydney.
funny,
Yeah, so
funny.
I know Kelly, and then we kind of, we got a lot of astrology friends, like astrologers from Sydney. We went together to conferences.
Yeah.
It's not like she was my best friend, but yeah, we definitely
Well,
would
she does a
recognize each
lot
other at the
of,
street, and say hello and
yeah,
how
yeah.
are you, and like we've known each other. Yeah.
That's so
So I
cool.
thought that might
Yeah,
be interesting.
it blows my mind how that community, I thought the tarot community was large, but the astrology community is huge. It's huge.
Yeah.
And it's made me reappreciate in so many ways how nice and small sometimes the tarot community is, because I do love that we really do feel like in so many ways a big family in many, many ways. And the
Yeah.
astrology community, it's so much bigger, but there are some such real gems, and it's just been great to like step into that space a little bit. But that actually brings up a really good point about what you were saying earlier about working with the deck with clients, because I very much, like, I thought of you and I hoped that it might help set the tone, or set a tone that was really rich and engaging. Not that changes the storyteller aspect, because that's the other piece. I've said it several times on Instagram to people. You will never not go straight back to a birth chart. Nothing is, or an astrological chart, nothing is ever going to trump that chart. That is the tool of astrology. And so I don't expect people like Chris Brennan or Kelly Surtees or you as professional astrologers to be like, oh my goodness, like finally we can do this. No, like the professional astrologers, you have your tools already, and your whole craft is learning how to deliver those messages and do all of that. It was more of just when you're the receiver of an astrological reading, it is you're listening to the astrologer talk and point at a graph that at the end of the day you have no idea what you're seeing. You literally, there's a lot of trust involved, because that astrologer could be saying, if you're completely green, that astrologer could be saying, Venus is in house 6 and it but you just don't know what that is, and that's okay. That trust has to exist there. But so I didn't think I was like doing anything that was going to like rip through the professional astrologer community. I think the Taurus piece of me that loves tone and loves sacred space and loves Palo Santo burning and loves the visual of the cards and the pile of crystals to the left, I love the format of cards. And
Yeah.
so I think
But I didn't really understand it the way. No, I didn't understand it that you were like, oh, scrap the chart and now use the cards. No, I didn't.
Yeah, no, good.
I know you didn't mean it like this, but
several people,
yeah, and I
I've had
think
a couple people ask about that. Several people have asked, like, so I don't need to look at birth charts anymore, astrological charts. Like, no, you absolutely do. It's where you get all of the information to lay these cards out.
yeah, and I think this is just a great visual aid to. I think it's great for beginning people, or for somebody who's just learning learning about the planets. You put all the planets out, you can put your little keywords there, you know, you can, it's just engaging and it's beautiful. So I think it's just creates more of an interest, and the chat can be dry and it can be overwhelming and it can be scary. So I think this is a perfect way to simplify, to kind of get your head around, these are the planets, okay, these are the symbols of the planets, so then I can track them down on the chart, the houses, what, it's perfect for beginning students, really. And it's perfect to, like for me, I'm going to use it more as a visual aid for my altar, and I have few other ways which I'm going to share in my review, so I'm not going to
so excited.
spoil it because I'm going to connect it with tarot cards, obviously. I'm not going to just work with one deck. Hello.
You don't work with just one deck? What?
Okay, so to wrap our amazing interview, even though I could chat forever, and my last question to every guest is always about, like, just a way for you, like a way of your favorite way to play with the cards, or some way, a way you can share with us, which you can just give us maybe a little snippet of something you like to do.
Your when you told me that, you know, that's how you end the things, and I've seen that in your other interviews, it was perfect timing because I was just doing a blog post, and so I just decided to post the blog last night, in addition, you know, knowing we were going to talk about this today. And it's just basically another way that I use the cards, but it's kind of become right now my permanent sort of space. And folks, to keep this brief here, they can go visit the blog and read the post.
I will link it below.
Thank you. Yeah. But it's just a way, much like we were talking about here, to check in visually with where everything is every day. And so I, right now on my desk, and it's been this way for a while, I have all the house cards laid out. And then, of course, based on my chart, you know, each star sign is assigned to a house. So I have Pisces in house 1, and so Aries is in the house 2. But then the only thing that changes is every day I look at those planets and I see, you know, where they're all located in each of those houses, and I move them accordingly when they need to move. So the sun just moved into Aries from Pisces. So so I just moved that the other day, and I'm really enjoying that because it, I get to sit down and sort of just check in, and I get to revisit every day, well, what does it really mean that Saturn is in my 11th house right now? You know, and I keep seeing that every day when I sit down. Saturn's in my 11th house, you know, and it's helping me to see that Saturn's not going anywhere anytime soon, but the moon and the sun are traveling much faster, and we're going to be moving Venus here pretty soon. It's really helped me to see, it's helped me to want to dive deeper into these energies, because it's like guests in your house. If you have a guest that comes to stay with you and they're there for just a couple days, that's a very different experience than if you have a guest that comes to stay in your house, like your mom maybe, and she moves in for 2 years. You know, that changes your whole household. Like if your mom moved in with you and was living with you for 2 years, that would be very different than if I if I flew over to you and visited for a week, you know. And the planets are very much like that. Some of these planets are with us, you know, for longer durations than others, and it's been a really nice way to start to sink into that energy a little bit.
Yeah, you're right. Some planets just move slower and spend for like a long time in a house, and you only can actually see the effects of it after they move out. And then you look back and you're like, oh, even as an astrologer, you know, like you can never predict what's going to happen. You have certain set of tools, like, you know, a certain set of keywords, what direction things might go. But and in retrospect, you can actually see, oh yeah, it was actually in the, you know, borders of these keywords. But you can never just with 100% certainty pick this keyword. This is how it's going to manifest for you. Just this. It's kind of always goes, it's really up to you.
I found that the moon moving so fast, you know, the moon goes so fast, and I've been posting the current moon phase on my Instagram, and even me, it's like exhausting because it's just like, okay, now it's now it's a waning gibbous, and yesterday it was a full moon, and now it's a waning gibbous. It's still a waning gibbous, but now instead of being in Libra, it's in Scorpio. And what does that mean? How can that empower you in your day? Because for me, it all comes back to living your life intentionally as possible. I mean, that's my only objective with tarot and with working with astrology. Is I feel like the last few years of my life, it's been really clear how we're not entitled to any moment beyond this one right now, and so if this were my last moment, I'm spending it with you, and life can change really quick. And I've had several losses, and I've had several friends have losses. And so at the end of the day, we don't know what we have. So how are you living? It's so easy to go out of intentional living, because you have bills to pay, and you have this drama going on with this person. You have, your job. For me, it's all about just trying to live intentionally. So tarot I use for self-reflection, and it prompts me to think about things in ways that I've never thought about before. And with astrology, it's a little different because it's less about self-reflection, and it's more just about, right now I'm looking out my window and it's pouring outside. So I know when I leave this house today, I'm putting on a rain jacket, because it's pouring outside. And I kind of view the astrology that way. I don't look at it as predictive. I look at it as like planning, like having a clue as to maybe what I want, what's the overarching energy as above, because I do believe that energy is being mirrored down here in our lives. And so I want to have some sort of insight as to what to put on, what to embrace for energy.
And that disaster in English means, actually, it's from Latin, dis, against, aster, the stars. So it's like going against the stars. It's a disaster, basically.
I love that. I didn't know that. That's really awesome.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think we're going to slowly wind up. Thank you so much.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much. You're so amazing, and everybody that has had the opportunity to work with you or watch you or just enjoy you and engage with you, for me, just talking with you is just absolute pleasure, because I remember saying a long time ago, like, I could just sit and listen to you talk. I love your accent, your spirit, your vibe. We're also lucky to have gotten to see you, and I'm glad you haven't deleted your YouTube channel.
Well, I can say really the same about you. And I think, through internet, through online community, you just have people you really gravitate towards, and it's just easy, it's going to be an easy, nice connection. You don't have to struggle of like, hello, and it's not awkward, and it just feels natural. So I feel the same about you. So I'm really happy that you agreed to be part of this series, and I hope everybody will enjoy this interview as well, and especially people who like astrology, because we spoke about astrology quite a while.
I hope people enjoyed it. I hope nobody's sleeping.
Okay, so thank you again. And stay, Patrick. I just switch off the recording. Okay, thanks guys for watching, and see you at another episode. Bye.